Okay, so if you're a business owner and you're wondering why everything feels harder now than when it did when you were smaller, and you're kind of feeling like things are falling apart, you're wondering, how does anyone grow a business to be $10 million? Well, this episode's it's it's for you, man. And while we often talk about businesses being in SOP chaos, I mean, most of the people that are listening to this who are on our mailing list, they've come to us because they're in some way, shape, or form of SOP chaos, where they've been documenting processes, but they're in all different formats, spread across multiple different platforms, and no one's using them because nobody can find them. Well, getting your processes organized and implemented, it's not the only solution. You've got to do more than that. There are some significant mind shifts that also need to occur. So, my guest today has helped hundreds of business owners 10x their companies from what seemed like chaos and the impossible to building wealth, creating freedom, and having an impact in their community. Today, my guest, I'm in conversation with Brett Gilliland. Brett is a former vice president of Infusionsoft, and many of you know that that is our CRM software. We've been using it for years and years and years. Infusionsoft became Keep, later became Keep. And Brett helped that company go from a million to $100 million in revenue. He's now the founder of Elite Entrepreneurs. It's a company that grew out of Infusionsoft, and he helps business owners build real companies with real teams and a heck of a lot less chaos. So, Brett, welcome to the show today. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. And such a generous introduction. I want to make one slight correction because I'm nitpicky when it comes to details. I wish I was at Infusionsoft when they were at 1 million in revenue. It was seven figures, but it was further along in seven figures. They had not achieved 10 million. I was closer to 7 million when I plugged in. But yeah, we went from 7 million while I was there to 100 million. And the journey was exciting for sure, but we learned a lot of lessons in that process. So I'm excited to teach your listeners and have a great conversation with you about what is the difference between those who figure out how to do that scaling thing and those who don't.
It's hard. I mean, so many people I talk to just have no idea how to get to that $10 million mark. So, yeah, so you've worked with hundreds of business owners who've crossed that $1 million mark. What is it about that $1 million threshold that creates so much friction that where things get so chaotic, not less? Why is that? What happens?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's interesting because it's less about the dollar amount, but there's so much pattern around this that it happens to it just so happens that around 1 million is when these things start to come apart. But it's probably better tied to the organization structure itself. So when you're starting off as an entrepreneur, that I call it a gritty, scrappy founder entrepreneur, like you figure out everything, right? You're trying to figure out your product or your service and how it fits in the market and find people who will buy it. And anyway, you kind of grind and grit your way to 100,000 in revenue, and you've replaced your salary, and now you're full time in on this thing. And maybe you have a partner, maybe you don't, but it's time to start bringing on other people, and you hire a second person, or maybe you partner up with somebody, and you're figuring out sales, and you learn how to sell, and you get to this 300,000 mark. So I've very intentionally used 100,000 and 300,000, and you've already brought up 1 million and actually 10 million. But there's this pattern on the ones and threes of revenue where every time you triple the business, there's a new thing going on. So from 100,000 to 300,000, there's a stage of business. From 300,000 to 1 million, there's another tripling, another stage of business. One to three, three to 10, and so on. There's a new stage of business. And it's a lot like human development. You know, kids aren't born adults, they're born as infants. And then infants become toddlers, and then toddlers become preschoolers. There are these stages of human development. Just like that, there are stages of business development. And it's around that $1 million mark where the stage becomes one of the team growing and the complexity growing, and that's really what trips the business up. It's not the magic number of $1 million. It's that now the team is growing into complexity. There's a growing number of dynamics happening in the business, and it's no wonder that the SOP chaos that you're talking about starts to really hit about that same time as well.
The, it's interesting. Michael Gerber uses those terms, right? He talks about businesses in infancy growing to adolescence, growing to maturity, and so few businesses make it to maturity. Um, Yeah, that those stages, we see that so often, and we talk about this all the time too. Is that your one and threes law, that shifts that happen? Can you explain a little bit? I think you call it the ones and threes law, a shift that has to happen at 1 million, 3 million, and 10 million.
That's right.
Because we're really the most of the people that we're talking to today are beyond the 100,000, $300,000 mark. So can you
Yes.
explain what is that at that level, moving from 1 million to 3 million to 10 million? What is that law? Why does it matter?
So I gotta apply another framework here really quick. We'll just superimpose it. So how we add value as the business owner shifts over time. It
Mm.
coincides with these development stages, and we go from learning and doing. Think about that gritty, scrappy founder time, learning and doing, to leading. And right around 1 million is when the team's getting to be five, six, eight, 10 people, depending on the type of business you have. But you're squarely moving into this territory where you have to learn how to lead and not be the one learning and doing anymore. So you're assembling a team, but a lot of business owners have a hard time letting go. And so they don't let go, and their knowledge, their expertise is so critical to the machine working that they don't know how to extract themselves from that. So at that $1 million mark is about the time that we need to extract ourselves from the machine, stop learning and doing, and start leading. That adjustment is very difficult for people. And it might be overly simplistic to say lead, right? It's like you just got to lead better. There are actually some organization development things that need to happen to bring people together, a growing number of people together. But it is about you changing as a leader, and it's about your company learning how to do bigger company things. Which, by the way, documenting processes is a key part of all of that, right? Your business is made up of people, processes, and systems, how information flows, how we make decisions, like all of this stuff comes together and it's perfectly organized to get the results that you're getting today. Anyway, I tend to get lost in my explanation, Michael. So keep guiding me. But
That's okay. No, that's it. I get it. What you mentioned, organizational development changes, is I'm not quite sure if that was the word, but you want to share a little bit about what you see as these critical organizational. What is it that? How does the business owner move from being the chief doer to being the leader?
yeah, and I think all of your listeners will recognize the analogy of the hats, right? And you've
Right.
brought up Michael Gerber. Michael Gerber would talk about all the hats. And the hats represent all the different roles that we hold on to. Like I got my, I don't know, my accounting hat, and I got my technician hat, I got my manager hat. Like there's all these hats that I'm wearing, and that key transition point around 1 million is to go from all the hats of doing to the relatively few hats that belong to the leader. So here's what those hats are. And it goes along with your question with the organization development. We have to we got to do things organizationally to help more and more people, right? We have a growing team. We have to have more and more people taking targeted, coordinated action. So that requires some mechanism for clarity. Okay, so number one hat for that business owner trying to become the leader is to set the vision. What is it that we're about? And better said, why are we doing this? Okay, so there's a purpose element, there's a set of values that we're going to live by here at this company, and there's a specific mission that we're going to go accomplish together. So that combination of purpose and values and mission is what it means to set the vision, and that is the hat, the foremost hat that you should be hanging on to as you're making that transition from doer to leader. You're responsible for setting the vision so that everybody knows this is why we're doing it. This is how we go about doing things together. And this is the specific thing that we're up to right now. So that clarity of vision is the number one responsibility of a leader and is a big transition for most business owners trying to make that leap from doer to leader.
Keep going. Excuse me. So if we were to define three accountability bullets, the three main accountability bullets from a leader, from a doer to a leader, number one is setting the vision.
That's right.
What would two more be?
Yep, and there actually are two more. So you gave me the perfect pitch, softball here. So the second one that the leader has to do is to build the team that's going to be able to go accomplish that vision. You already have some team built, so I'm not saying, throw that all away and start over. I'm saying some combination of the current team and anybody that you need to bring in. You're responsible for building that team that can go achieve that vision. And then the third hat that you would keep or hang on to as a leader is to make sure we have the resources to successfully accomplish the mission together. So some business owners call that you'll all recognize this phrase. Don't run out of cash, right? Like don't run out of money. That's what we sort of paranoidingly, if that's a word, watch throughout our business's journey early on. It's like, do we have money in the bank? And we're always looking at that bank account. And our job as a leader is to make sure that there's enough fuel for the growth that we intend to go realize together as a team. So set the vision, build the team, get the resources. Those are the three leadership hats that you must wear if you want to make the transition from entrepreneur to company building CEO.
Can you even advance that further into the whole concept of strategic planning? Because a lot of the clients that we work with, we talk about the importance and value of strategic planning and how once a year you're going to have this annual strategic planning meeting where you go back to the mission part of your mission, purpose, and values. I mean, generally speaking, your purpose and your values are, that's you hold those sacred. Those don't change very often. But the mission, I like to call the mission the brains. Those are the numbers. The purpose is your heart, and the values are often who you are, what you hold sacred in the business. Um, but they do one annual strategic planning meeting, and they don't really do quarterlies or monthlies. So
Yeah.
it's like so much is lost there, right? So can you speak to that a little bit? The importance and value. What do you have to do for quarterly and monthlies?
Yeah, thanks for drawing that out, Michael. And I want to go back to what you were saying about the head and the heart of the business. That purpose and those values, like you said, those last forever, essentially, right? You don't really go around changing those very often, and they make up our shared identity. That's everybody in the team is passionate about this purpose, and they fit with these values. That's our shared identity, and the mission or the brains that you talked about, that's our shared objective, right? Our very specific shared objective. So we have this shared identity and the purpose and the values, and we have this shared objective, this destination that we're going to together. That's the what by when kind of mission that we're up to. And the planning process speaks to the part of that organization development work that I was talking about earlier. So thank you for bringing me back to that. We've got to get very intentional, and that's our job as a leaders to help the team co-create a vision that we can all be excited about and get behind. But then we need mechanisms. We need structure, routine, rhythms, organizationally to go turn that vision into reality. And so people know, oh, we got to do annual planning. And so we have an annual planning offsite, but then they fail to put together the organizational mechanisms to make that plan real throughout the year, to stay focused on it. One thing that I know you'll agree with, Michael, because you help everybody get very intentional with their SOPs, document them. One thing that we have in common is a belief that human beings wander, drift, get distracted. That we need a little bit of structure, maybe a lot of structure, to keep things on track, consistent, executable, right? And so just like you're helping people get clear with their processes so that they can make the widget exactly the same way every single time or deliver that service the right way every single time. We need processes and structure in how the business is run that will ensure we stay focused on that bigger picture, that vision, and that we turn it into reality day in and day out, side by side with the getting and serving of customer work that you guys have to do to keep the business going, right? So Michael Gerber is famous for talking about, businesses are just doing it, doing it, doing it, in that fun Michael Gerber voice, and then that we got to spend more time working on the business and not just in it. Well, the organizational development work we're talking about is how do we set up the planning and execution rhythms and mechanisms to make sure that the on the business work is happening at the same time as or in parallel with the working in the business to get and serve customers or get and serve clients or members or patients or whoever it is that you sell to. So that's a tricky thing that every business has to figure out is I can't just get and serve clients. I have to build tomorrow's business. And that juggling act or that balancing act is really hard for a lot of businesses and people just get sucked into that day-to-day whirlwind and they don't ever do that future enabling work. So that's what we're talking about is how do we do the future enabling work and having offsites once a quarter is key. Having tracking mechanisms for your future building work is key. And then having ways to bring the team together to reorient to those things on a frequent enough basis is essential.
Yeah, those tracking mechanisms, they could be key performance indicators, they could be scorecards, but I think it's the owner's function, the leader's function and the manager's functions in the organization, department manager, to hold people accountable to those KPIs. I see this often in people doing budgets, and they say, "Oh, well, we're gonna do just for sake of whatever, $100,000 a month." And at the end of the month, they did 80, and they go, "Oh well." It's like, no, 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 no. You didn't do 100. You're $20,000 short. How are you going to make up the next $20,000? Are you going to do 120 next month? Or are you going to do 110 for the next 2 months? Or 3 months from now, you're going to do 120? What is the answer? What is the plan for bringing this strategic plan back on course? So that's, I think, a key piece too, right? That holding people accountable to the strategic plan and those metrics.
Yeah, and you're right. And a lot of business owners stumble on this, Michael, because, well, where did they learn how to like give clear ownership to begin with and hold people accountable? Like it's not the same as sales and marketing and budgeting. It's a different set of leadership activities that we have to develop. And so one of the things, just to put a quick plug in here, one of the things that business owners who want to make this shift from 1 to 3 million and 3 to 10 million, they have to become leaders and eventually leaders of leaders. And there's some learning to do in there. There's some growth to do in there. And one of the key organizational development pieces is to align the work. If we say we're going to go achieve X by the end of 2030, and we haven't aligned all the work and the ownership of each of those roles to go achieve that, we're all going to be looking around kind of, and we shouldn't be surprised, but we tend to be surprised when it doesn't happen. And so you gave a great example. We thought we were going to do X, but we ended up doing Y or X minus something, right? We weren't there. And a lot of that has to do with not being clear ahead of time about who does what and how this plan's going to come together. So I'm a huge fan of organization structure, of clear KPIs for every role, like what's expected from every role. But you can't really start holding people accountable without clear ownership and expectations beforehand. And once they have those clear expectations, those people own those roles. You can hold them accountable to what we agreed to, right? We said, we'll pay you this, we'll give you these benefits, these holidays. Here's the value from the company in exchange for the work that your box is expected to deliver. And you're in that box because we think you're the right person. And you're in that box because you said you were the right person. And so we're going to pay you in exchange for this value. And when that value exchange falls short, we definitely need to have the right conversations about how to get them back on track.
And that's the leadership needs to know how to have those conversations.
That's right.
So is this what happens? Just a quick note for our listeners. If what Brett and I are talking about right now is landing for you, um, and I'll just do a quick plug for what's coming up in August 13th, 14th, and 15th, right in Park City.
Yep.
So you're having an elite leadership summit. You're hosting it with a team, and this is where you come and learn these mind shifts and these Jedi tricks that
Well,
you teach,
yeah,
right?
I love that you're calling them mind shifts and Jedi tricks. There is a mind shift, but there's actually tangible skill set. There's leadership frameworks, leadership skill set that people have to learn. And part of it is mind shift, but part of it is I have to behave differently. And
Uh,
so, yeah, there's tools for that. There's examples for that. There's a whole community of people who are going through this process too. And the Leadership Summit is a great gathering of seven, and actually there's some eight-figure businesses there who are sharing with one another the lessons learned, the challenges they're experiencing, and there's just a lot of benefit to being there away from the office, seeing clearly some of these leadership challenges, leadership issues, and how to solve them, so you can go back and go tackle those things when you get back to the office.
yeah, and I'll have a button in below here that people can read more about it. But there was something you said on another podcast that kind of just stuck with me right there. I think you said you are perfectly designed to get the results you're currently getting.
That's
Can
right.
you expand on that? Because it probably goes in different directions, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, every single person listening to this can look at themselves in the mirror right now. Whenever you hear this, right now, you can look at the mirror and congratulate yourself because you have designed the perfect organization to get the results you're getting today. Now, yeah, that may sound a little tongue in cheek, but think about that. We're getting the results we're getting because we've created what we've created. You have perfectly designed the thing that is cranking out what you're getting today. And that's the good news there is that you are in control of that. And if you want something more, something different, something better, then we have to change the way that we're doing the work today. And that's that there is hope in that. It may feel a little overwhelming, but if we get really clear about what we want and then we organize the world around us to go deliver that, you've all done that from the start. You imposed your will on the world and said, "I'm going to go create this thing." And you did it. You did it successfully. And you did what 95% of businesses out there never did. And that was to get to a million plus in revenue. 95% plus never got there. And you did it. You created that. But now what you created is necessary but insufficient to get you where you're trying to go. And so we have to be able to change. So you're perfectly designed for what you're getting now. And if you want something different, it's time to design and build something different.
And does this happen at 1, 3, 10? Is that what you're kind of thinking? Different
Those are
shifts in
those
thinking.
are the normal places for those transitions to occur. Yep,
Mm,
there's a shift there. It's kind of like riding a multi-speed bicycle, Michael, where you start out in a gear that makes sense for what you're doing, and within a reasonable amount of time, you max out the what's possible to get out of that bicycle in that gear. You're just tapped out.
right.
And you can try to pedal harder and faster, and you will burn yourself out because that gear isn't designed to yield more. It's not designed to go where you're trying to go. So until or unless you shift gears, you're just going to pedal harder and faster and burn yourself out in that gear. But when we do the company building work that allows us to shift gears at the 1, the 3, the 10, right? When you make that shift now with similar or even less effort, we get more yield out of that business. Like we crack through that next plateau and we're growing again. And there's another plateau coming. The next time you get to one of those ones and threes, it'll happen again. But yeah, it's natural patterns that we see time and again across all kinds of industries. If your business requires you to grow with people, meaning it's not just an information product online that you got a few VAs and you're never going to build a team. If you need to add more people, the larger you get, then everything we're talking about is applicable to you.
Mm. It's interesting you use the term less effort. This is that is such a mind shift because most people think more sales means more effort. And it's not what happens. You can't do it going from 1 to 3, 3 to 10. You just can't be the same people. They have to be different people. And what's kind of magical in that is that actually you can go from 1 to 3 with less effort, not working as hard and doing the things you love to do instead of, having to do all the things you don't like doing. But
That's right. But it
so
does require a shift. Yeah.
it does work absolutely, and a belief and an understanding and some confidence that okay, this guy's right. He knows what he's talking about. Let's do it. Okay, I have a couple of questions for you because I always want to. I'm the SOP guy, right? So I have a couple
Yeah.
of questions about your thinking around SOPs in terms of leadership. So we see a lot of seven-figure businesses who get processes scattered across all different platforms, in all different formats. And I said at the beginning, at the start, we call this SOP chaos. Do you see that same kind of disorganization, the businesses that you work with, and how do you address that?
Yeah, I absolutely do see it. It's very common for a growth-oriented entrepreneur to not be super excited about documenting process, right? It's very, very common. In fact, details might be one of their arch enemies. Like, I don't want to get into the details of it, when in fact they already have. They've mastered the details of it, but they know how to do it themselves. And herein lies the primary challenge for being able to scale a business at this stage is to be able to organize work and give it to somebody else, right? Delegate to somebody else. And we may have some psychological challenges around that. Not just I don't like details, but I'm afraid that if I let it go, it won't go well, right? I don't want my customer to get the wrong end of this deal if it goes sideways because I wasn't right there making sure it happened the right way. So there's a lot of reasons that we have a hard time letting go. But documented processes is the answer, even if it's not something that we enjoy doing personally. And the good news is, and Michael can vouch for this, the good news is you don't have to be the expert at documenting your process. You just have to be clear that that is necessary. We've got to do this work, and then you can begin to make it happen. Whether it's with some of your team members' help or it's with somebody on the outside, like Michael and team. They do this kind of work. So there are ways to make it happen, but if you don't make it happen, here's what I can guarantee. You will be stuck in the business. You will not be able to make that shift to the next level because you don't have the work organized in a way that can be delegated to other human beings to take care of. And until you document it enough to hand it off to somebody else, it's never going to happen. And that challenge only gets bigger as the company grows. If you want consistent output, consistent quality, consistent care for customers, it you have to create a consistent machine that people can run. And I don't know of any way to do that without documenting processes clearly.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And processes are boring, boring things. However, it's the implementation of a process that's to be celebrated. When you actually write a process and delegate it to someone else, um, it's remarkable when they get it done. And there's a concept I like to share called good enough. Yeah, the business owner can do it really well, probably better than anybody else in the company. But if anybody else in the company could be doing it as well as the owner, they would probably be business owners. So there's a concept called good enough. The client doesn't know how well Brett can do something. The client gets sold something in the sales process, and the purpose of operations is to deliver on that promise that was made in the sales process. And that's all that matters. It has to be good enough. Um, Michael Gerber uses two terms. He talks about abdication and delegation. We used to
Mhm.
be Gerber. I don't know if I told you this before we started, but we were Michael Gerber e-myth consultants for 17 years. We delivered his mastery program for years and years and years. But he used to say, if you are trying to delegate something without a process, that's complete abdication of responsibility because people only retain about 18% of what you tell them. And that's why they keep coming back. How do I do that again? How do I do that again? Or making mistakes and winging it, making it up themselves. But if you can give them a process, that's effective delegation. And then you have the scorecard to know what it is that what are the KPIs? If they do it following the process, what's the baseline? What should they be able to achieve? Um, how
Can I
about
add one thing to that, Michael?
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I most business owners that I know think, oh, someday my business might be worth something and I'll have this exit moment,
Right.
right? And everything Michael's talking about is absolutely true. I just want to add, I kind of want to add another lens on this, another angle, which is the idea of a transferable asset. Until you actually document processes that can be consistently delivered by anyone, a competent somebody in that box, right? Like we have boxes on organization charts. That's just organization of work. That's just us saying what's the best way to get all of this work done, and then hiring people into those ownership units, right? Like I have somebody to own this box, this work. Anyway, it's just organization of work. But if you don't have documented processes, you don't really have a transferable asset. At some point, you can't sell it. You've just made what you could make for as long as you were in there running it. And I know your business is worth more than that. But it's on the other side of clearly organizing the work in a way that other people can consistently do it without your involvement all the time. So that's an important note.
It is important. In fact, just to capitalize on that a little bit further, I like to say that there are three types of business freedom for the owner. Number one is to sell the business, right? But you got to be able to sell the business for what you think, the owner, what you think it's worth. And it'll never sell for what you think it's worth unless you have everything dialed in, all your processes dialed in, all your job descriptions dialed in, your org chart, your people. It's a system. Someone's going to look at that system and go, whoa, I can scale that puppy. So to be able to sell it for what it's worth, you've got to have your SOPs dialed in. So that's one business freedom is to sell it. And if you're in your 60s, you're probably starting to think about selling your company. If you're in your 30s or your mid 30s, early 40s, there are two other types of freedom. One is I like to call it calling in for the numbers from the British Virgin Islands, right? You're away on a month-long vacation. You can take a vacation whenever you want, but you've got managers running your company who are sending you scorecards, and you know that if those scorecards are good, you can keep vacationing. And if those scorecards are not good, then maybe you have to come back. You got to jump on a plane to come back. And the third business freedom characteristic is doing what you love to do in your business without having to do all those things that you hate doing. So just as an example of this, I have an attorney who's a client of mine. He doesn't even want to be an attorney anymore. What he loves is marketing.
Hmm.
So he's doing all his legal marketing for his firm, and he's got attorneys doing the attorney work. And if you are calling in for the numbers from the British Virgin Islands, well, and you want to sell the business, well, you don't have to take any offer. You will only take the offer that you're asking because you don't need to come back. So anyway, that just capitalizes on the importance of having that system that you're selling. Okay, I had another question here. One last question, kind of about SOPs and stuff. A lot of founders, they think SOPs are boring, they're bureaucratic, but have you seen a change in a company's culture once the right processes, once those SOPs? We're not talking about revenue and success, but culture now. What happens culturally in a business when you implement processes?
Yeah, well, I'll zoom out for just a second and use a term that I love to use that I hope people will be able to take away. Our a part of our job as leaders is to help people take targeted, coordinated action. Okay, targeted, coordinated action. Targeted, we have a shared mission. Coordinated, we all know our part in that. And so that organization of work piece is how originally we designed it to all be organized. Well, if he does that and she does this and I do this, then that'll all add up to what we're trying to achieve together. But then throughout the messy everyday of business life, we get distracted, we get pulled in different directions, and that coordination sometimes gets off. And so the SOPs are in the detail of how each person delivers on the value that is expected of their role. And if you don't have that clear, you start to wander too much. You get inefficient, you get broken promises to customers, frankly. Things start to fall apart. So it's really important for us to organize work in a way that even if you don't feel like, we need all that detail, you are going to love it when people have clear ownership of their part in the whole, right? Every process is a part of the whole customer value delivery, right? Or my friend Brad Martineau, who you probably know, calls it a happy client factory, right? Like I'm making happy client factories, or sorry, happy clients. That's my factory. And along the way, there's all these steps to make it happen. Well, each individual step is a process, and different people own each of those steps or collaborate on some of those steps, but they all have to be there for us to get the outcome we're looking for. So you might detest detail, you might not, you might think it's boring, but this is the real essence of leadership is getting clear on the work that has to happen and who owns what and how it all comes together so that we can make a healthy profit delivering our promise to our customers, our patients, our clients, our members, right?
Yeah, that clarity, how to achieve what's expected of me. Um, it's like, oh, Michael Gerber used to call it a game worth playing, creating a game worth playing, kind of like what Brad was talking in a little bit. Um, if you can get your company to a place where people love working there, which is the antithesis of this new term called quietly quitting, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people are hiding and they don't want to, they're looking for another job and they just don't want to get caught, so they're doing as little as possible. But there's a study that was done at the Haas School of Business here in Berkeley that said that you can get a 43% bump in productivity if you show acknowledgement, that clarity, if you reward. I mean, if people love working there, you can get a huge bump in productivity. Um, there's something else that I don't think we've touched on this. Yes, can you on this yet? Can you walk us through your values phone screen method?
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might feel a little random given everything we've talked about. So let me give it a little context. As your number one job as the leader is to set the vision, right? And we reviewed the components of that really quickly, purpose, values, and mission, where purpose is the why and the values is the how. That shared identity is key. If you're going to build a team that's going to win consistently over time, we've got to have a strong sense of that shared identity. And then we got to have that shared objective, that mission we talked about. So it's our job to build the team that's going to go deliver that. And so we use the term sometimes hire, lead, and fire to the vision. We don't
Uh,
want to hire somebody that's not passionate about our purpose. We don't want to hire somebody that's not a fit with our values. We don't want to hire somebody who doesn't have the skills to own the job that we need them to do that's aligned with our shared destination, our shared objective. So we're going to hire people who fit with the values and have the skills we need for this leg of the journey. And so the values phone screen is a way to save a ton of time and energy in the hiring process on the avoiding the wrong people, right? Sometimes we fall in love with the resume. We're like, oh, they have all the skills I'm looking for. Let me interview them. And we go right to scheduling typically like an hour-long interview in the office. So they come in face to face. We start to talk with them. In the first few minutes, we feel like this isn't a good fit. But I've scheduled a whole hour. They're here, and most of us aren't like direct enough or blunt enough to say at that point, I don't think this is going to work. Why don't you move along your way, right? We're sort of worried that maybe we'll cross some line of illegal behavior of discriminating or something. Anyway, we schedule an hour-long thing when we shouldn't have. And so the values phone screen is really simple. You look at your resumes like you always do. You find the ones you think might be a good skill fit, But before you spend any more time assessing their skills or their experience, we're going to find out, do they share the values that are non-negotiable here? This is our way of being here, and we can't compromise on it. So they a fit with the values enough that I would even entertain their skills and their experience. So we get them on the phone for a 5 to 10 minute phone screen. During that time, here's the phone screen in a nutshell. If you have 5 values, let's say, or 7 values, then you tell the candidate, hey, we have these 5 or these 7 core values that are super important to us here. Before we take any more of your precious time or spend any more of our valuable time, we just want to make sure there's enough of a fit on these before we go any further in the process. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is for each of the values, I'm going to tell you what the value is, and I would like you to share with me what that value means to you and give me an example of you living that value, preferably in a work situation, right? A work example. And so I give a value. Our number one value at Elite Entrepreneurs is we genuinely care. And they say, so what does that mean to you? And so, Michael, if you were the candidate, you would say, oh, genuinely care. I think that means, you know, ABC. And I say, okay, great. Give me an example of you showing genuine care in preferably in your work. And then they give an example. All right, our next value is we face challenges with optimism. What does that mean to you? Give me an example. Within you know, if you gave them a minute for each of the values and you had 5 to 7, you did a little bit of intro on the front end. Hey, how are you? How'd you find out about the job? Why are you interested? Within 10, 15 minutes, you can have a nice phone screen to see if they fit enough with the values that you want to bring them in for an interview. That will save you a ton of time, and it will say, more importantly, it'll save you from making a huge hiring mistake because you fell in love with somebody's experience or background. And you said, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if we had somebody with that experience? This is exactly what we're looking for. And you bring them in, and you've got all this confirmation bias now against these experience and skill sets, but you overlook anything that might be a red flag around the values, and then they come in and they just destroy your culture, and it's no fun to work with them, and it's really expensive and time consuming. So that's what the phone screen is, just a quick way to assess values fit before we invest more precious time interviewing them more formally.
That's great. That's so great. Yeah, there's a guy named Brad Smart who wrote a book called Top Grading, and one of the stats that he says is that most companies, when hiring outside of their companies, mishire 3 out of 4 times.
Yeah,
75% of the time they make mistakes when they're hiring. And Jim Collins is always talking about got to get the right people on the bus. So
that's right.
they've got a mission, purpose, and values, not only the destination, but the values as well. Um, okay, so let's. I hope people stay to the end because just that. I mean, that's the kind of piece that someone could use right now,
Oh yeah, no,
provided they've got their values identified.
right, they do have to
But
have their values in place, but yeah, our elite growth method, that scaling from 1 to 3 million is all about this kind of work. It's about how do I organize the work? Well, how do I set a clear vision first? Then how do I organize the work and build the team to be able to go do that? And, you know, hiring the right way, hiring well is part of that. But then it's the ongoing planning and execution rhythms and the other leadership rhythms like weekly one-on-ones with each of your direct reports,
right, right.
right? There's just leadership and organization structure and process things that have to happen if you want to scale. And that's the key phrase here, if you want to scale. You don't
Right.
have to. You really don't. You can you've created a nice living for yourself, presumably. You're not, you know, eating ramen anymore. Like you figured it out. It's working. But if you feel frustration about it getting stuck and that you're starting to burn out because you're having to do that same thing over and over again, there's more that you can do to make your life easier and start growing again and enjoy the ride.
So you've got the Elite Leadership Summit coming up, and you've shared some stories about what's it about, who's it. But why don't you just like lay it all out for us? What's it about? Who's it for? What's the transformation that you hope people will walk away with? Why is it going to be worth attending your summit?
Yeah. Thank you for giving me one last opportunity to make the point here. And I wish I had said this earlier in our time together. So only the really stalwart ones who stayed to the end will get this. But the truth is, and Michael, you can check me on this. The truth is, your business cannot outgrow your leadership capability. If you are incapable to take it to 3 million, it's not going to go there, right? I hope people can see the connection there. My leadership holds back my business to the point of my leadership capability. And by extension, if you start to have a leadership team, the collective ability of that leadership team is the gating function to how far that business can go. And so I'm only saying that because years ago we realized how essential leadership development is to businesses that want to go from 1 to 10 million. As you learn how to become a leader yourself, and then eventually in that 3 to 10 million journey, how you learn to lead leaders, right? That's the next phase of leadership. It's about developing as a leader. Whereas before it was about developing as an entrepreneur. I got to learn how to market. I got to learn how to sell. I got to learn how to, you know, do these business operations things. You did all that. You got to a million. Now it's about leading more and more people to do things together that are intentional. And that's a challenge. So the whole reason for the summit is that we've been teaching for years your business cannot outgrow you as a leader. And so one event of ours in the year is dedicated to elevating our leadership. And that could be your leadership personally as the business owner, but it could also be the leaders that now report to you. If you're starting to build that leadership team, we have one company where we live that we serve who they started with us. They had 25, 30 people in their company, and they had, a handful of leaders. They recently hired their 200th employee. They have 30 leaders, and they're bringing every one of their leaders to this leadership summit because they know our business can only grow as far as our leadership can take it. And so they're investing in their own leadership development, but they're investing in their people's leadership development as well, because that's how your business can keep growing. So yes, there's a lot of organization development. Yes, there's structure and process that we can teach you, but the common denominator across any business that wants to go further is we got to have leaders that can help take us there. And so that's what the event is all about. It's about the what and why of leadership. We do these sessions called Real Talks with business owners who have taken their business to that place you want to go, right there at 10 million plus, and some of them are at 30 million plus, and they're looking back saying, "Here's what I learned in my leadership journey along the way." So that's why we call them Real Talk sessions. We have an expert doctor. Her name is Sierra Simpson, and she's going to be talking about I don't know if she's calling them health hacks, right? Basically, how can I make sure my own personal health and the health of my team is top notch? Because this journey can be very wearing if we're not careful with ourselves. We can take too much out of our own health. So we have personal leadership sessions like that one is like, how do I lead myself effectively? Team and department and company leadership sessions. But the whole 2 days is crammed with leadership sessions, and then one of the afternoons is like a hot seat or mastermind type of format where you get to sit with other people, other leaders in the room, and share some of your leadership challenges and get other people's ideas on how to best move forward with your biggest and most pressing issues. So that's what the Leadership Summit is about, and it's totally fun at the same time. It's a good time.
It sounds like it's going to be amazing. Okay, one last question. I always like to ask this question at the end of a conversation when I'm interviewing a guest. If you could offer one piece of advice to those listening right now, what would it be?
So it actually is related to what we just talked about. And I'm going to cheat and give two pieces of advice. When we were growing as fast as we were at Infusionsoft, and you remember these days, Michael, because you've been around a long time. There are some things we did that we messed up. In our journey from 7 figures to 100 million, there were two things I wish that I could go back and do. Okay, that's what I'm about to share with you. The first is what we just talked about. I wish we had developed leaders faster. We did not invest adequately in developing leaders fast enough. That was the first thing. The second thing, despite all of my knowledge about hiring for fit, as we grew, we still let people in the door that we should not have let in the door, and it cost us dearly. It took an award-winning culture, and it created a bunch of, it was like we had this foundation, this cultural foundation that was amazing, and it was like taking a jackhammer to it. Like it just created a bunch of fissures in that cultural foundation. And so as I had built the hiring and onboarding process there, and we had that thing dialed in. And as I moved on to do other things in the business, we just got away from some core practices, and as we got bigger, it just got harder and harder to make sure that we preserved that foundation. And so we let people in the front door that we should not have let in, and we didn't develop our leaders fast enough. So that would be my advice. Get clear about who belongs here from a value standpoint. Never compromise on that. Guard the front door with your life, and then make sure that you develop leaders as quickly as you can, because that is one of the gating factors to your future growth.
Wow, Brett, this has been gold. I know so many founders who hit that $1 million mark and suddenly feel like they're sprinting in sand. And what you've shared today about the importance of vision, process, and culture and the hiring, I mean, I think it gives people a roadmap, and I think the Elite Summit will just add to that. Um, So if you're listening to this and wondering how anyone ever builds a $10 million, $20 million, or $30 million business, check out Brett's Elite Leadership Summit. I will have a link to that below so that you can click on it and go to it. And if you want to get your business processes out of chaos and into action, be sure to visit us at www.businessdesigncorp.com. Our specialty is integrating people, positions, and processes and getting people out of SOP chaos into operational independence. So again, Brett, thank you, man. I really appreciate you for taking the time today and joining me in today's conversation.
Really fun. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye.